Who took that shot? The army was left stunned after an unbelievable 3,200-meter precision hit. And then, all of it just stopped. Every single person in that tent turned to look at the same screen. Nobody said a word for a long time, because what they had just seen, what the numbers were telling them, didn't make sense. At least, not to anyone who hadn't been out there on that ridge. Let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand what happened that day, you need to understand the man. And to understand the man, you need to understand where he came from. He was born in a small village, not a famous place, not the kind of town that ends up on maps people actually look at. His father was a farmer. His grandfather was a farmer before that. The land out there was flat and dry and went on forever in every direction. And when you grow up in a place like that, you learn two things very quickly. You learn patience, and you learn how to be still. He used to go out before sunrise, when the air was cold and the world hadn't woken up yet, and he would just lie in the tall grass and watch. Watch birds, watch rabbits, watch the way the wind moved across the fields in slow, rolling waves. His father thought he was wasting time, but what he was really doing, without knowing it, was training. Training his eyes, training his mind, training himself to become comfortable with silence in a way that most people never are. When he was old enough, he joined the military. He wasn't the tallest in his unit. He wasn't the loudest. He didn't have the kind of personality that fills a room, but his instructors noticed something about him early on. During exercises, when everyone else was shifting, scratching, adjusting, he was completely still. His breathing would slow down in a way that other recruits couldn't seem to manage, even after months of training. One of his instructors wrote in a report, "This one is different. Keep watching him." He trained for years. Real, serious, demanding training. The kind where you lie in mud for hours and you are not allowed to move, even when insects crawl across your face. The kind where you fire hundreds of rounds at extreme distances until the calculations stop feeling like math and start feeling like instinct. He learned to read wind the way a sailor reads water. He learned to account for heat shimmer, for the way air density changes at altitude, for the tiny corrections that separate a miss from a hit at long range. Every single day, in rain or sun, he was out there, practicing, waiting, getting better. By the time he was deployed, he was considered one of the best long-range marksmen in his unit. Not famous, not decorated with a wall full of medals. He was just quietly, consistently exceptional. The kind of person whose name comes up when something difficult needs to be done. When the mission required patience above everything else, they called him. Now, on this particular day, the mission was not supposed to be his. He was assigned as a spotter, the person whose job is to observe, calculate, and guide the shooter. He was lying flat on a rocky ridge, the sun hammering down on the back of his neck, watching a distant enemy position through a high-powered scope. The temperature was brutal. The ground beneath him was hard and uneven. He had been in that same position for over 6 hours. His legs had gone numb somewhere around hour 4. Below, in the valley, a patrol team had been pinned. They couldn't move forward. They couldn't safely fall back. The enemy position was too far for any standard weapon to reach. Too risky for an airstrike with the terrain as complicated as it was. The radio channels were filling up with voices trying to figure out a solution. Time was running out. Up on the ridge, the man lying flat on the rocks had already started doing the math in his head. He had been watching the target for a while. He knew the distance. It had been measured and confirmed. 3,200 meters. To put that into perspective, that is roughly 2 miles. That is the kind of distance where, on a clear day with good eyesight, a person looks like a tiny dot. At that range, a bullet doesn't travel in a straight line. Nothing does. Gravity pulls it downward the whole way. The wind pushes it sideways. And here is something most people don't think about. The Earth itself is rotating while the bullet is in the air, and that rotation actually changes where the bullet lands. You have to account for all of it, every single variable, at once. And there is one more thing. At that distance, the bullet takes almost 4 full seconds to reach the target. 4 seconds is not a long time when you're making a cup of tea, but when you are lying on a ridge with a rifle and you have just pulled a trigger, 4 seconds feels like a different kind of time altogether. You have already done everything you can do. The bullet is in the air. All you can do now is wait and trust your numbers. The man on the ridge reached a decision quietly, without any drama. He didn't radio in and ask for permission. There was no time for that. And even if there had been, the process would have taken too long. He had looked at the situation the way a doctor looks at a patient, assessed it, weighed it, and made a call. He moved his rifle into position. He started talking to himself in a low, steady murmur, running through the calculations one more time. Wind speed, wind direction, temperature, elevation difference between his position and the target, distance confirmed, bullet drop at this range, Earth's rotation, a factor of a few centimeters, but at this distance, a few centimeters matters. He settled into his position. His breathing slowed. There is a specific state of mind that the best shooters describe, a kind of calm that doesn't feel like calm from the inside. It's not relaxation. It's more like the whole world narrows down to a single point of focus, and everything outside of that point simply ceases to matter. The pain in his legs, gone. The heat, gone. The noise from the radios somewhere behind him, gone. There was just the scope, the target, the wind, and the numbers. He exhaled slowly. Halfway through that breath, he stopped. His finger rested on the trigger without pressure, just touch. He made one final tiny adjustment, barely a movement at all, less than what you'd use to brush a hair off a page. And then he fired. The crack of the shot split the air on the ridge. The rifle kicked back against his shoulder. A small curl of smoke drifted upward. He didn't move. He kept his eye to the scope. And he counted. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. Then the radio exploded. The patrol team below was shouting, not in panic, in complete, stunned disbelief. The threat had been neutralized. From a position that nobody down in the valley had even thought to look at, because no one believed a shot from that distance was possible, the problem had been solved in a single moment. The team on the ground was safe, and they had absolutely no idea who had just helped them, or where the shot had come from. Back in the command tent, the confusion was immediate. The commander started asking questions. Where did the shot originate? What position? What range? When the answers started coming in, when someone pulled up the data and confirmed the distance, the tent went very quiet. People looked at each other. Someone said the number out loud, slowly, as if saying it faster might somehow make it less real. 3,200 meters. The room stayed quiet for another long moment. Military analysts were brought in to verify the shot. Ballistics experts reviewed the data. The numbers were confirmed again and again, and each time they came back the same. What had happened on that ridge was not luck. What had happened was the result of thousands of hours of training, years of discipline, and one moment of absolute calm under enormous pressure. The question moved through the camp like a current. Soldiers passed it from one to another. It spread to other units. It went up the chain of command. The same 4 words, over and over. Who took that shot? Because whoever it was had just done something that most people in the military would have told you, that morning, was not physically achievable. When the man finally came down from the ridge, he walked into the command post, looking like he had spent a long, tiring day doing ordinary work. Which, to him, in some ways, he had. He set his rifle down carefully. He rolled his shoulders. He looked around for a moment, and then asked, in a completely normal voice, if there was any water. Someone handed him a bottle. Someone else started clapping. Then another person joined in, and then the whole room was clapping. Hardened, experienced soldiers who had seen a lot of things in a lot of places, and who did not clap easily. He accepted it the way a quiet person always accepts unexpected attention, with a small nod, a slight look of discomfort, and a half smile that disappeared almost immediately. The commander walked over and extended his hand. The 2 of them shook hands. The commander looked at him for a moment, then leaned in slightly and repeated the question that had been circling the camp all afternoon, the same question everyone was asking. He took a slow sip from the water bottle. Then he smiled, just slightly, just for a moment, and said nothing at all. There are shots that people remember because of the weapon used, or the dramatic moment they happened, or because someone filmed them, and the whole world watched. And then there are shots like this one, shots that most people never hear about, that get buried in reports and confirmed by analysts in quiet rooms, that are remembered only by the people who were there, shots that don't get famous, but that change everything for the people they protected. What happened on that ridge matters not because of the record it may or may not have broken. Records are just numbers. The years of training in mud and heat and cold. The discipline of a mind that learned, over a long time, how to go completely quiet when everything around it was loud. That is not something you can issue from a supply room. That is not something that comes with a rank or a title. That is built, slowly, quietly, over years, by someone who believed that the work itself was the reward, long before anyone was watching. And maybe that is the most remarkable thing about this story. Not the distance, not the calculation, not even the 4 seconds of silence after the trigger was pulled.